Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just want to let everybody else know that the stream is going on right now. Okay, glad to see you here. Glenn Gahabit, D-Rock Den, by any means necessary. Kevin, Kenneth Gibson, T-Mac. I'm going to get started in just one moment. And tonight's topic is one that I really wanted to do after somebody asked me to do a video about Dr. Umar Johnson. And this live stream is about Black people's fear of following through, finishing up, and moving forward. And this is a big problem that, thank you, D-Rock, Dan, for the super chat, really appreciate it. Before I get started on the lecture, I'm going to put my Cash App in the chat. And you guys can donate to the Cash App by clicking the link in the chat. Or you can donate to the Patreon by donating by the link in the chat. So that's going to take care of those two things. And I'm going to get started. And again, this was a topic that I really wanted to do because one of my viewers asked me to do a video on your Dr. Umar Johnson, and I decided that he was just a small in a bigger picture, and this bigger picture is this issue that Black people have with the issue of following through, finishing up, and moving forward. Because when you look at the Black community from a panoramic perspective, you'll see that your Dr. Umar Johnson is just a symptom of a culture in the Black community. And this culture in the Black community is something that has gone on, as I see it, for the last 50 years since the days of the Civil Rights Movement. Because we have a lot of Black people who have a lot of big ideas about things that they want to do, but they never really accomplish anything. And the main reason why they never accomplish anything is because they have some sort of mental issue that prevents them from following through on what goals they set, finishing what goals they set, and moving forward. And I believe that this is a mental issue for many Black people because they just are afraid of moving forward. Because as long as they can stay in the position of the victim, they believe that they have some sort of power. And walking away from the position of the victim is something that they don't want to do. And this is the main reason why many Black folks undermine themselves, because they fear being in that place where they have to take responsibility for themselves and take responsibility for the direction of their lives. So oftentimes you'll have a lot of Black people who will come out here like a Dr. Umar Johnson, and they'll set a goal for something they want to do, And this goal that they set for themselves will be something noble, something lofty, like your Dr. Umar Johnson set the goal for opening this school to help Black boys. But what will happen is these subconscious fears that many Black people have will be the thing that undermines them. And these fears really are deep in the subconscious of many Black people. And it's these fears of that are the thing that wind up leading to them tripping over their own feet or hindering their own progress. Now, these fears are, as I see it, really based on the whole notion of being able to go out here and they're afraid of having to deal with the consequences of whatever goal they're trying to accomplish. And because they're afraid of having an end, what they do is try to lead things going into a draw. And so what they will do is they will start out with all of this passion, all of this fervor, all of this enthusiasm talking about this goal. And people will get on board, they will get excited about the goal that these Black leaders, these Black pastors, these Black activists, and these people like your Dr. Umar Johnson have. They'll get real excited about these goals. They'll start putting money into these goals. And what will happen is, as this person is being given these resources, they start feeling overwhelmed about the responsibility given to them. And it's that feeling of being overwhelmed that winds up leading to them winding up stalling and not following through. Because the big problem with a lot of Black people is they start getting that, again, that anxiety and those feelings about this whole project they're working on, and these feelings of inadequacy about themselves, and this fear that they have about going out here to do something. This is the thing that winds up with them not really pushing forward like they should. And it leads to them sometimes even winding up and not even trying to even do anything, because what they do is they let those fears overtake them, and they let those fears be the thing that wind up being their primary focus. Now, a healthy individual, once they set a goal, they start laying out how they're going to get towards that goal. Unfortunately, a lot of Black people, they're still dealing with the ramifications of single parent households, white supremacy, racism, and because they're dealing with those ramifications, there's a lot of self-doubt, and a lot of those self-doubts again lead to these fears, and these fears are the thing that wind up making many Black folks their own worst enemy as they're working on whatever goal they're setting to plan. And well, again, while they start out with this enthusiasm, what eventually happens is they wind up becoming fearful, they wind up becoming fretful, they wind up feeling that sense of dread, that sense of being overwhelmed. And then what happens is they stop putting effort into things. And when they stop putting effort into things, they stop following through. Now, in order to achieve any sort of goal in life, you cannot just set a goal, you have to make efforts to follow through. Now, following through is a process where an individual decides to continue moving forward, and they follow through by putting all of their effort into whatever goal they set. And what happens with a person who follows through is that while they have this goal, they continue to persevere. And if they have setbacks, they continue to persevere even in the face of those setbacks. For example, a couple of years ago, I remember I did a Kickstarter for the cover for Isis Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. and that Kickstarter wound up not getting any donations. And I could have just given up at that point and walked away, but I wanted to see this book get a great cover by Bill Walko. So what I did was I found another way to do things. So what I did was I went into my toy collection, went into the collection that I had, picked up my old toy catalogs, picked up things like I had like a Ninja Turtle pie wrapper, and many other things. And I started putting things on eBay so that I could get the money to pay for this book cover, because I set this goal that I wanted to achieve, and I wound up at the end of the day winding up achieving that goal. So what happens with a lot of Black people is what they do when they don't when they have a setback is they just give up. And when you give up, you're not going to follow. That shows that you're just scared of conflict. And that's something I talk about in the Man Crisis, because a lot of times people, when they wind up with an obstacle, the first obstacle, they just give up. And giving up is a sign that you just don't have any sort of resolve. And a lot of Black people, when they go out here and they set goals, they don't have the resolve. And you need to have a resolve in order to follow through. So that means even if you have a setback, you're going to continue to persevere, and you're going to try to find a way, even if people are not supporting you. And another problem I find with a lot of Black people in following through is that they only want to commit to something when it's popular, but not when it's not popular. They don't want to go on. So that's another big problem with Black folks and following through. As long as they've got the attention of the masses, they will want to put all their efforts into something. But when they find out that nobody is watching them, they want to give up. And as somebody who has gone out here and had to persevere in the face of when people don't support him, like when my family didn't support me when I published my first book, All About Maryland, and in many cases my family doesn't support a lot of my stories, I understand that you still have to go out there, because you have to believe in what you're doing, and you have to believe in it in order to continue persevering, even if people, even your own family, don't support you, and even if the public doesn't support you. Because I've had many feminists come out here and say they hate the ISIS series. I've had many Black people say they didn't like the ISIS character because she was light-skinned, but I still continue to push because I believe in what I wrote, and I believe in what I'm putting out here. And you as a Black person have to believe in what you're doing if you want to ever accomplish something, because another part of following through is having that resolve to continue working on what you believe in and continuing to push even though people are pushing back, and even if people are resisting you. I'm sorry about the burping, but sometimes I have a gas and it comes up in my diaphragm. So there's nothing I can really do about that. Thank you, Steve Awalamak, for the super chat. I'm glad you're enjoying The Man Crisis. Jay, most of my books, you can get them through Amazon and paperback. I'm working on something to get things to people, maybe through a PayPal or something like that. I might start offering autographed copies, but you can get most of my books in paperback on Amazon right now. And you can get my books. You can get my books on Amazon in paperback, but I'm working on a PayPal thing so I can ship books directly to people. But I'm going to get back to the topic. And again, a lot of Black people, they don't have that resolve. So whenever somebody challenges them, what they do is they fold up, they withdraw. And once they go fold up and withdraw, they get discouraged, and they wind up not finishing what they started or taking the next step in committing to what they started. And that leads to another big problem with Black people is they will sit there and talk about how they have this big goal that they want to accomplish, and they will sit there and they get frustrated, they get overwhelmed, and they wind up getting overwhelmed, and they wind up stopping what they're doing, not understanding that when you stop something, you never accomplish anything, and you cannot stop when when you run into resistance, because it's the resistance that shows us how dedicated you are. And a lot of Black people, what happens is once they get a little bit of resistance, that's when they give up. And if you give up when you start to get a little resistance, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything, because a little bit of resistance means you're winding up having to go and wind up when you get that little resistance, what happens is you have to keep pushing, but these people, they just don't want to push back, and they don't want to keep pushing to progress. They think that it's supposed to come easy, but nothing in the real world is easy. And that's something a lot of Black people, they don't really understand. They're expecting, oh, I just come in, show up, and people are supposed to do things. And no, it doesn't really work that way. You have to show how you really want something, and you have to really push to go get what you want. Now, another problem that I run into with a lot of Black people as related to following through and resistance is the fact that they don't want to make any sacrifices. A lot of people want things in life. They want success. They want fame. They want to be known for something, but they don't understand that there's a major trade-off as related to getting what you want. And when you're going out here and you're working on a follow through, you're going to have to make sacrifices. For example, when I changed high schools, I had to change the way I did things. I had to let go of toxic people, and I had to let go of toxic habits. So there were things that I looked forward to. Like I used to look forward to going to get my comic books on Friday, but I couldn't do that anymore. So in order for me to get the grades, in order to get my high school diploma, I had to let go of my comics for a while, and I had to actually start leaving things alone that I like TV shows, and making the work I needed to do to get out of high school a priority. Same thing with my books. I mean, there's a lot of movies and DVDs I used to watch, but I don't really watch much TV anymore. And what I do now is I focus on making my content the best that it can be, whether it be a book or a YouTube video or a live stream. I want to be able to make my content the very best. So I have to sacrifice something in order to get towards the goal that I want to get. And the goals that I want to achieve on this platform are: one, increasing my book sales; two, increasing my web presence and getting more people to know the SJS Direct imprint and the products of the SJS Direct imprint; and three, just getting the word out and getting more people to know myself and getting to know my product. So what I want to do, if I want to do that, I have to let some things go. And that's something you're going to have to do. And a lot of Black people, once you start pressing them with resistance and then tell them that they have to make sacrifices to get success, that's when we start to see them start to back up. And that's when we start to see them walk away, because they would rather have their creature comforts than achieve whatever goal they said they wanted to achieve. They sit there and they'll talk about these goals, but the minute you tell them that they have to stop doing certain things in order to get what they want, they don't want to do that anymore, and they start backing out. And that's something I've seen from a lot of Black people as related to things, as related to trying to achieve good grades, as trying to achieve on the job, as trying to achieve in competitive places like the workplace. Once you start telling them that there's going to be a cost for things, they don't want to pay the cost. What they want to do is they want to come in and get stuff for free, not understanding there is no free in real life. So that's another thing that's a roadblock for people as related to following through, is making those sacrifices. And another thing that I run into from Black people as related to following through is not only the sacrifices but the commitment. And this is something I have seen ever since I was in high school. And I would see these guys, they would come in the first couple of days of school, and they would be there for about 1 or 2 days, and then they would just disappear. And then about towards the end of the semester, they're coming back with one sheet of paper talking about how they want to try to pass and how they want to try to do things. Some of them come in with a one subject notebook talking about how they're trying to do things. And again, they show me that they're not really committed. And this is another problem that impacts following through, is commitment. A lot of people want that success in the Black community, but they don't want to wind up committing to anything. And not being able to commit is a big problem with Black people, is that we want to go out here and, again, get the big time success or meet these goals, but we don't want to go out here and dedicate towards what we're trying to do. I mean, in order for me to become a pretty decent writer, I have to write every day. And in order for me to stay in my skill set and improve my skill set, I have to continue to commit to writing every day. And just like a bodybuilder, he goes to the gym every day. But a lot of Black folks, we want to get to those results, but we don't want to follow through with commitment. And when you don't follow through with commitment, guess what? Most people don't take you seriously. And that's one of the biggest problems with Black folks, is they want to be taken seriously about what they want. But when you look at their actions, you don't see the effort in the follow through. And when people don't see the effort in the follow through, what people do is they start looking at you as someone they don't see as someone they need to take serious, because you're not taking it as serious. Why should somebody else take you seriously if you're not going to take yourself seriously to go out here and dedicate to the hard work in the days of the follow through, pushing past the obstacles in the follow through, committing to the work you're going to need to do in the follow through, or making the sacrifices you're going to need to make as you follow through. Because following through isn't just about you setting a goal, it is about you committing to a series of actions towards accomplishing that goal. And when people see you going out here and committing to those actions that are showing how you're working towards that goal, that's where people start to take you seriously. And that's when people start to say, hey, this guy is about this. This guy really is into this. This guy is not just talking with the emotion, he is following through with the action. And that action shows me how passionate this individual is and how much this individual cares about what they're doing. Because when you see that follow through, that's the thing that makes people look at you and say, hey, that guy really means what he says, and he follows through with actions. For example, I have often talked about the ISIS graphic novel, and even though I had a setback on the Indiegogo, I still persevered, and I went out here and I went to do things with my Patreon. And this year I was able to get the Esteem No Good Deed comic finished, and that was done because I wasn't going to let the Indiegogo, which failed, be a setback. I wanted to work towards this goal, and I'm still working towards that goal because right now, while I've got the no good deed feature that's going to be in eSteam Blast from the past, I also want to get this ISIS feature out here so that I can get a complete ISIS graphic novel to my readers. And that's something I'm still working on. And and again, I have the pages of the No Good Deed strip up there on my Patreon. So that was a reward for the patrons. And excuse me, that was a reward I gave to the patrons for continuing to support me, them being able to read the strip for free. But I also wanted to show that I had not given up. I had not given up, and I had not gone out here and quit, because even though I ran into resistance, I still keep pushing forward. And again, if you keep putting effort in, you're going to get effort out. But a lot of black folks, again, when they wind up making a few setbacks, they wind up giving up. And you can't give up when you've got a few setbacks. You still have to keep pushing. And while you may not get the completed goal, you may be able to get some part of the progress. And each piece that you make will get you one step further to where you want to go. But a lot of black folks, one is following through and they get a setback, they give up. Or in some cases, like in the case of the civil rights era, a lot of times you get a few accomplishments, but then you stop focusing on the goal. And that was another big problem with the civil rights movement was, yeah, we got the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, but we didn't really follow through as related to our economics. And that was a thing that led to a huge setback because a lot of black people were too scared to follow through. And one of the fears that I believe that is deep in the subconscious of a lot of black folks as related to following through is the actual fear of responsibility. And this is a major fear that I see a lot of black people, they're having a problem with as related to following through, because the ultimate goal of following through is getting to the finish line. And getting to the finish line, once you've gotten to the finish line, you have to start then making plans for your next goal. And this is something that I believe a lot of black people are afraid of as related to following through, is getting to that finish line. Because once you get to that finish line and things are where they are supposedly so-called equal, what happens is you can no longer call the white man a racist in some cases, and you cannot go around playing the victim anymore. And a lot of people who are codependent, they need that position of the victim because they believe that this position of the victim is a position of power. And they fear that if they don't have that victim position, they won't be able to get their needs met. And this fear, I believe, is one of the things that on a subconscious level winds up sabotaging many black people and leads to many black people like your Dr. Umar Johnson self-sabotaging. Because when I take a critical look at your Dr. Umar Johnson, I saw a black man who was self-sabotaging himself. I mean, here you have a guy who already raised the $2 million or so to start the school for black boys. And instead of him starting the school for black boys, we see him making a series of excuses. And I believe that those excuses come not because of bureaucratic regulations or things like that, or even things as related to building codes. I believe that much of this comes from his subconscious as related to the fears that he has as related to having to finish this goal, because once you get to the end game of starting the school, then you have to start working on the goals as related to making sure that this school is up to one, the standards of education as related to a state board, and two, it's up there and it's doing what it's supposed to do, mentoring young black boys, preparing young black boys for manhood. And I believe that all of these are things that your Dr. Umar Johnson is afraid of. I believe that he is afraid of being accountable. I believe he's afraid of being responsible, because once you finish what you set out to do with your follow through, you then have to take accountability for what you have done. And then you have to start making plans for what you're going to do next. And on a subconscious level, many black folks are afraid of that end game, because that end game means that they are now in the driver's seat. And with them in the driver's seat, they have to start taking charge for things, and they can't blame somebody else for their failures. At this point, now it is on you. And when there is no white man to make as a scapegoat, even though there's going to be racism and white supremacy out there, you are going to be the one in charge now. And this is the thing that terrifies, I believe, a lot of black people as related to the final stages of following through, like what we saw with Dr. Umar Johnson and his school and many other black folks, is they start to get scared of their success. Of what I see is their success. And that's another thing that I see as related to the whole issue of following through, is the fear of success. And this is something that I've seen with a lot of black people on a subconscious level. Many are afraid of success. They're afraid of going to the next level. And they would rather be the big fish in a small pond rather than going out here and competing in a larger pond. And they do that because they fear being vulnerable. They fear having to deal with criticism. They fear having to deal with being challenged. They fear having to deal with other social groups. And they fear having to deal with new and different social circles. And because they fear these new and different challenges, what they do is find some way to self-sabotage themselves and wind up stagnating in one place so that they can remain the big wheel in one place, but they never wind up growing to actualize their potential. So a lot of black folks, they're afraid of moving forward because they fear that if they achieve this goal, they're going to, one, have to take that responsibility for themselves, and then two, what they're going to have to do is then be vulnerable, because it means you're going to have to step out of your comfort zone, and you're going to have to step in a new place and be vulnerable in that new place. And that is something that terrifies, I believe, a lot of black people. And one of the things that leads to them not being able to go out here and, after they start working to meet their goals, then not being able to go out here and really start moving forward to new goals. As long as they've got these old goals and they are the big wheel with the old goals, they can still be a big player on the board, but stepping away from that place and stepping into a new place means they have to go back to being small. So they would rather be a big fish on a platform like Black social media, or be a big fish on a place like YouTube or Facebook, but they don't want to go out and take the risks to be a serious competitor on another platform or another stage. And again, when you don't follow through, you wind up missing out on the ability to grow. And this is one of the biggest problems as related to Black people in following through, is they just don't understand that this really impedes your growth. I mean, here you are, you set this goal, you are working towards this goal, and all of these things are about leading to you growing, changing, and learning more. But when you wind up getting to a point where you start to get this success, what happens is you wind up cutting off your own success because you're afraid of growing and you're afraid of learning new and different things. And they are afraid of doing this. A lot of Black people, they're afraid of going out here, and they're afraid that if they go out here, they will wind up not being able to go out here and be on that level. A lot of them have, let's say, a subconscious fear that if I go to this level, I won't be able to stay up here, and they are fearing a fall. But you cannot be afraid of anything. Jawaku asks a good question. How do we build back that confidence? Black people built Black Wall Street 100 years ago, as well as schools, universities, and businesses. So we could do it again. And the whole thing with building that confidence is you have to face your fears, and you have to go out here and, again, face your fears, and then trust in God. And the whole thing is you have to understand, if God wants you to do something, it's going to get done, but you can't be afraid to go out here and do what needs to be done. You have to have faith that God will help you be able to do what needs to be done, and you have to be able to go out here and continue to push for what you want to do, because the whole thing about building confidence is you start to push back against your own fear, and as you're pushing back against your own fear, then you start to see things you want to do getting done. This is something I've had to deal with being a person dealing with social anxiety and having to deal with dealing with my own fears as related to how people will take things that books I have written, stories I have written. I have to deal with a lot of things as related to fear, but I have to push back on those fears if I want to accomplish anything. For example, I thought that people wouldn't like the man crisis when I wrote it, and I thought that I was going to have to deal with a lot of heat like I dealt with when I did the book and the blog, why 70% of Black women are single. So I had to push back against my own fears about failure, my own fears about the book would not be received well. And I just said, I have to put the book out here and just let the book be what it's going to be. And I had to do that with many other books besides The Man Crisis. I just had to put the books out there, let the audience decide, and not try to get emotionally involved in things to the point where I wind up sabotaging myself. And that's something a lot of people need to understand about your own fears and doubts. They will keep you from being able to go out here and doing what needs to be done. And you have to in order to build that confidence, you have to just trust in God, let Him take care of what needs to be taken care of, and still do what you need to do. Because I still get heat from feminists who still hate ISIS series books. I still get heat from people who don't like some of my other books that I write, like some of the books in the Spinsterella trilogy and other books. But I still write and publish those books because I believe in them. And part of building that confidence is believing in what you're doing. If you believe that you have done something to the best of your ability, then you just go out here and do it to the best of your ability. Now, another thing that impedes people as related to following through is this whole thing about it not being good enough. And one of my viewers talked about that in the comments section. It's something I've dealt with for years before I really started learning how to let go. It's this whole feeling that things aren't going to be good enough, things aren't going to be perfect. And that whole mental notion in your mind, that's going to wind up with you either hesitating or giving up and not really accomplishing what you want to accomplish and not getting to the finish line. And what you want to do When you start feeling that it's not good enough, go ahead and do it anyway. That's what I had to do way back in 2002 with the first ISIS. I mean, I used to have a lot of doubt when I would publish books, but I started with the first ISIS. It wasn't the greatest book in the world, but it was the best I could do in 2002. And each book that I did wound up getting better over time. And the whole thing is, nothing is going to be perfect when you do it. That was something I learned from Dr. Robert Glover's No More Mr. Nice Guy, because he was trying to do the Mr. Nice Guy book and make it a perfect book. Unfortunately, it wasn't coming out the way he wanted. It was coming out to be 400 pages, but the finished book he did was only 160 some pages, but it was a book that resonated with people. And I took from that, when I read that back in 2009, that I don't really need to make a perfect book. I mean, you just put out the best you can do and just leave it at that. And that was something I learned, again, way back in 2002 with ISIS. But we all evolve, we all change. What we did 5 years ago isn't what was going to be today. What we did 10 years ago isn't going to be what we're doing today. And as we continue following through and finishing what we accomplish, what happens is we become better at what we do. And our best at one time is not the best that we're doing now. And the reason why that is because our skills are evolving, and our skills are evolving because you're learning different skills, you're learning different techniques, and that's all because you wind up wanting to take risks, and you don't mind being vulnerable. And because you don't mind being vulnerable, you wind up learning more about a different skill set, a different set of techniques, and you wind up learning more about yourself. Because when I started getting serious about writing in the 90s, I wasn't as good as I was right now. But as I got books like Sid Field's Screenplay and Robert McKee's Story, and I started talking to other authors, I started honing my skills as a writer, and I started to get better, and I started learning about different techniques of writing. I started learning more about screenwriting, started learning more about comic book writing, and I started learning about how to apply different techniques that I learned towards improving my fiction writing style and my nonfiction writing style, so that I could create a style that was easy to read, easy to follow, and something that people could understand and just be able to get the information or enjoy a story very quickly. So what you knew, that's one of the things black folks have, is they want to come out here with something perfect that's going to impress people. But don't think about trying to impress people. Just think about, if this is the best I'm doing now, okay, I'm going to put this out here right now. And as I work on it, I'm going to work on getting better every time. I mean, this is something that a lot of black people, they're afraid of. They're like, I need it to be perfect. It's like, no, it does not need to be perfect. It needs to be the best you can do right now. And once you've done this best, let's start working on improving on the mistakes. Okay, you made mistakes here, you made mistakes there. Then on the next project, we're going to work on improving those mistakks. One God Martyr asks, could be the subconscious fear be the result of white society persecuting overly ambitious black men throughout history? Unlike John Haynes, his ambitions led to someone wanting to sabotage him. Yeah, I do believe that the subconscious fear comes from a lot of black men and women being afraid that white society will persecute them, tear them down, and do things like destroying Rosewood and Black Wall Street. So some black people fear that if they go out here and do something, that what they have will be destroyed. And others fear that if they go out here and they show they can do things, then somebody's going to come after them. So, but you cannot be afraid of that, because if God wants you to go out here and accomplish something, he's going to make a way for you to accomplish something. You can't be afraid of white society persecuting you. You have to go out here and do what you need to do, because again, God puts everybody here on earth for a purpose. He gives everybody here a work to do, and we can't get in our own way, or else we'll never achieve anything that God wants us to do on this earth. And a lot of big problems with black people is we start making white people into God, and we want to protect ourselves from white supremacy and its persecution. So we don't bring our best to the table, and we start thinking our best isn't good enough, but our best is actually good enough. And we have to understand that our best is what we can do right now. I mean, when I started out, I didn't have the tools to do things with the SJS Direct imprint. A lot of these people, they were like, oh, you're doing these hand-drawn covers, you're doing these covers, and they look really bad. And that was the best I could do because I didn't have the resources to go out here and hire professional artists. And I didn't have the network to go out here and bring professional artists in. So I had to use what was in front of me. And that's something a lot of black people are afraid of, is using what's in front of them. They want to have everything perfect right now because they're trying to impress an imaginary white person in their minds, but there's no impressing someone in your mind. And this is just you psyching yourself out. What you're doing is looking to impress something that is someone who isn't there. And if you're trying to impress someone who isn't there, what you're going to wind up with is you becoming your own worst enemy, because nothing you do will ever meet that imaginary person's standards. And these same imaginary people will be the people will be holding you back. But the irony is, it's just you holding yourself back because you're looking to meet these standards that just aren't realistic and trying to impress people, but you cannot impress people. What you do is put out what you can to the best of your ability, and over time they'll either accept it or not. And if as you improve, the same people who hated what you did back then are the same people who are still going to hate what you do right now. And there's nothing you can do about that. You just have to work with those who want to support you and move forward with those people. And Jwaku asks, I wonder, is it what the threat of sabotage more from white people or from some members of our own people? Well, it's a threat of both white people and our own people, because we've got some people in our community who also are ones who don't want to see people follow through. Because when you have a black person who follows through, this is something a lot of other black people don't want to see, because some black people are codependent on white supremacy, and some of them are dependent on white supremacy for their daily bread. And because they're dependent on white supremacy for their daily bread, they fear a black person coming up and accomplishing something, because they can't be the big fish in the pond. They can't use the things that they do or the things that they have, like their college degrees or their big-time jobs, as attachments to get the attention and approval of white people. And when they see a black man or a black woman accomplishing something, what happens is they start to get scared of their place in the so-called pecking order. And because they get scared of their place in the pecking order, they start looking to play the game of crabs in a barrel and looking to sabotage another black person. So this is one of the problems we have in the black community, as related to some of our own people fearing people finishing up and following through. When they see somebody out here finishing up and following through and then finishing up their goals, they want to either come in and try to sabotage you as related to the work you're doing, or they want to they want to go out here and try to get you out of your job. And I ran into that in AmeriCorps back in 2000 when I was working on this directory for the Strive program. This boss, he was having an issue with me because I was working too hard for him. And he wanted to try to sabotage me by trying to play this social game. And the whole thing is, it just showed me his insecurities. Because when you have a lot of these black guys who you have these educations and they have this as an attachment, they fear anybody who can go out here and finish follow through with the work that's given to them, who can finish things as related to what they're assigned, because it makes them uncomfortable, because they are resting on the laurels of whatever degree they have. And that just shows how weak they are, because they rest on the laurels of their education, but they're not looking to go out here and compete with someone out here. And again, these people don't want to finish up. They don't want to commit to anything. They don't want to finish anything. They don't want to follow through with anything. All they want to do is just be the big fish in the small pond. They want to be the big wheel in the small pond. And whenever they see competition, they look to crop test that competition. And when you start making serious efforts, this is when people like this start to get scared. And they get scared because what happens is they start seeing that person having success, that person making progress. And what happens is they wind up getting scared, because that means that they cannot rest on the laurels of a standard that was established. That means they have to start taking themselves to another level. And that's another thing that affects a lot of Black people as related to finishing up and following through and finishing up. I keep getting them mixed up, is the whole idea of moving to another level. Some Black people are comfortable in their spot. Like a lot of people in the civil rights movement, they got comfortable in their affirmative action jobs. They got comfortable in their government jobs. And once they started resting on their laurels, they did not want to go to the next level. And a lot of these people, because their world was smooth and comfortable, they didn't want anybody upsetting their apple cart. And because they wanted to stay in their smooth world, they wound up looking to sabotage other Black people who wanted to move forward. So they weren't afraid of failure. They were afraid of somebody challenging them and showing that they could succeed and do better than they could. So they wanted to keep Black people down on one level and keep Black people on the same level, so that they wouldn't challenge the white establishment, and they wouldn't take Black people out of the comfort zone that they and the members of their class wound up in. So a lot of them did not want to go out here and follow and start setting new goals. Once they finished getting what they wanted, the I got mine, F you mentality started to set in. And once they got the I got mine, F you mentality, it wasn't about moving towards a new set of goals. It was all about I got mine, F you, and I'm not going to help anybody else be able to do things because I'm in a comfortable spot. So I don't want to help anybody. I don't want to go through any sort of hardship. I just want to be comfortable where I am, and I don't want anybody else to have any sort of success or show that I can move forward. And this is another thing that affects a lot of Black people, is this other fear that Black people have of somebody else being more successful. A lot of times you run into people who have this fear of, oh, somebody else has success. So they start looking at themselves and they start feeling inferior in the face of someone else. And that fear, again, is related to them not wanting to go out here and go out of their comfort zone. And them, thank you for, let me see who sent this Cash App donation. Thank you, Ken, for the Cash App donation. I really appreciate it. But you have a lot of people, they want to stay in one place. But again, if in order to do things, you have to come out of your comfort zone. And a lot of Black people, again, don't want to come out of their comfort zone, whether it's the ghetto or whether it's a elite corporate job. As long as they are in a spot where they feel like they can be the big wheel, they don't mind being in that spot. but they don't want to grow. They don't want to learn. And in order to do something in life, in order to do something that's serious, you have to be able to have that ability, once you've accomplished something, to then start working on the goals, of the next level. But one of all the things that I see with Black people is they have this, again, subconscious set of fears, and the subconscious set of fears is one of the reasons why the whole Black community does not progress, why we really don't really accomplish much of anything. Like, for example, when we look at all of the Black men who were murdered by these race soldiers, by these suburban commandos, we'll have a lot of people marching and protesting. But when it's time to meet real goals, many of these same people run away. And that's the most troubling thing about our issues, is that when we start making some sort of progress, people start backing away. And that just shows how weak the resolve is, because when you're starting to make progress, you don't back away, you don't run away, nor do you rest on your laurels. No, that's when you have to keep pushing even harder, because that's when you have to persevere. Because when you start to make that progress, you have to keep pushing towards that progress. And if you don't start pushing towards that progress, people aren't going to see you as serious, and then you're never going to get anything at all. And that's why a lot of these marching and protesting doesn't get anybody anywhere, because people will march and protest because it makes them feel good. But then once the feelings wear off, they don't have the discipline or the resolve to keep pushing towards what they want. And in order for people to take you seriously, again, it can't be something socially popular to do. It has to be something you're doing because you truly do believe in what you want. Now, example, again, when I go out here and try to sell books like The Temptation of John Haynes, or books like ISIS, The Main Event, or books like John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose, I go out here and I put my full effort into everything I'm doing, whether it be on Twitter posting links, or Facebook posting links, or on a YouTube video with one of my ads or one of my live streams, because I believe in my books, I believe in my writing, so I keep pushing for it. And I want to go out here and get those sales, so I keep pushing for those sales, and I keep trying to push because I want more people to read my stories and see how good they are. That's something that means something to me. So, but when I look at Black people, they sit there and they talk about they want justice, but then they back off. You can't back off and expect to get something. You have to keep pushing if you get something. So you want something, you got to go out here and get it. And another big problem I see is, again, with Black people, whenever somebody is making progress, then you start to see people running away. I mean, that's another big problem I see with Black people is whenever somebody starts to make a little progress with something, that's when you're going to see people start to run away. And that shows weakness, because it shows that you don't understand that this is the time when you need to get on board and you really need to start supporting somebody, because when they have accomplished something, that means they're getting ready to gear up to go to the next level. And running away from that person shows that a lot of people, they're afraid of going to that next level. They're afraid of establishing a new standard, which is another thing that I notice with Black people is once we meet the goals, what happens is a lot of people run away because they're afraid of being on the new platform, on the new level, and meeting the new standard. And that fear, again, is a fear of taking that responsibility. And they fear that if this becomes the new standard, they won't be able to continue meeting that standard. But you've shown the world you can meet that standard. And being afraid of being on that level is absolutely ridiculous, because you wanted to work to a higher standard. You wanted to put yourself at a higher standard. And why walk away from a higher standard to be at a lower standard? And a lot of times people walk away from the higher standard because they, again, still are codependent on white supremacy, and they fear that if they go out here and show that they can do more, they will alienate their white masters that are in their mind. And they fear that if I go out here and take myself to another level, I may be expected to be on that other level. And what's wrong with being on a higher level? When you're on a higher level, what it's showing everybody is that you are capable of doing more, and you should be proud to be capable of doing more, because it's about showing that you have this talent and this potential. And once you've finished achieving these goals, then you want to go out here and achieve new goals. So why would I want to stay after I've accomplished all of this hard work and move past all these obstacles and drop myself down to a lower level? That's a critical question many Black people need to ask themselves as related to working towards following through towards a goal and finishing a goal. Why would I want to go down to a lower level when I can go and show that I can take myself to a higher level and then possibly take myself to the next level? That's a question many Black people really need to ask themselves, because this is what happens when you don't follow through. This is what happens when you don't finish up. And when you don't follow through and finish up, this is what happens is you wind up stagnant, like the current Black community is. And the main reason why the Black community is stagnant is because the civil rights movement was generation, and the baby boomers, they were too scared to finish up. They were too scared to move forward and set new goals. And they were too scared to demand better, because they still had these subconscious fears of not only failure, but they had a subconscious fear of success. And that subconscious fear of success and fearing a penalty from an imaginary white man in their minds, and possibly some real racists out here and some Black supporters. This is what had many Black people fearing moving forward as a race over the last 50 years. And this is why everything stagnated, because they didn't want to commit to moving forward. They didn't want to commit to following through. And they didn't want to committing to finishing the job and then working on the other job, which is, as I see it, Black economic empowerment and Black economic interdependence, where we have an interdependent economy of our own, not a codependent one where we depend on somebody else for our daily bread. And it's these fears that are affecting Black people right now, because I see so many Black people with talent and potential, and because they don't have, they're too afraid to go out here, what happens is they just wind up holding themselves back. And you shouldn't hold yourself back. I mean, there's so much out here for you to do, but you have to get out of your way. And Black people, we really need to start getting out of our own way. We are becoming, in some cases, as I see it, our own worst enemies. And when you become your own worst enemy, what happens is you wind up undermining yourself and undermining every goal you wanted to set. And that's what I saw with your Dr. Umar Johnson as related to him and his efforts with his school. He started to undermine himself because on some subconscious level, I believe he does not believe he is worthy, of the success he has achieved. I believe on some subconscious level, he feels guilty about achieving this success. And instead of him looking to try to build his school, what he does is he wants to go Hollywood, and he wants to go out here and play like he's some sort of superstar with other people's money. And he doesn't want to go out here and really show people tangible results because he fears that if he shows tangible results, he's going to be punished for showing those tangible results, either by white racists that or white people he's imagined in his mind, or he'll be punished by people in black elite circles. That's what he fears on a subconscious level. And that's something he has to get over, because when you start producing tangible results, that shows that you are really out here and you're really committed. It shows that your hard work is paying off, and it shows that you can get things done. Like, for example, when I was with Obsidian doing the Sean James Initiative, we set goals. I met those goals. And like when I was working at Strive, we set some goals and I met those goals. The whole thing about setting goals is meeting those goals. And when you get tangibles, it shows that you can go out here and be able to accomplish things. And that's nothing to be afraid of as related to anything. And when I do things like, again, the Easteen No Good G comic, which if you go to paper, if you're a patron, you can see for free. It shows that I can produce a tangible, and again, tangibles are fixed tangible things. Again, like this book I'm holding in my hand that show, okay, this guy, when we give him money, he comes back with something tangible for us. And this tangible is here for us to hold in our hands. So he's not only getting things done, he has a finished product to show the results of his work. And again, that's something you want to have when you're out here, is the ability to produce tangibles. And unfortunately, in the Black community, when you start producing tangibles, that's when you start to see the fear in other Black people's minds, because when they start to see you producing tangibles, instead of looking to support you, like in the case of many whites, non-Blacks out here, they will go out here when they see a tangible being produced, they will try to support that person even more, because they know that if they support that person with more, they will give them more. And once they do that, they will go out here and do things like bring jobs to the community and bring resources to the community. But with Black people, we're so afraid of losing whatever crumbs we get from white leftists in the welfare state that we don't go out here and step out on God's promises of better for us, because God has the very best for Black people. Unfortunately, too many Black people are too afraid of a white God to trust in the Most High living God and support those who want to help Black people. And this is something that Black people really need to understand, is that when you have Black people out here who can produce tangibles, you need to support those Black people so they can give you more tangibles. And again, when you can go out here and produce tangible results and have something tangible, again, that's a sign that this person not only goes out here and sets goals, they persevere as they follow through, they finish what they start, and then they move on to other projects, just like what I do with The Temptation of John Haynes way back in 2011. Now we're on to the third book in the John Haynes series. Again, that shows that I can produce tangibles, and it shows that I can meet goals and then set goals. Same thing with the ISIS series, which is on the 18th book. Again, showing commitment in things and showing that I can go out here, set a goal, follow through with that goal, and then finish and then move on. And Black people have to learn how to do this, because when you sit here and you're living in fear, you're never going to finish anything. You're never going to accomplish anything. And you can't sit there and then talk about there's nothing there. But people who are out here producing tangibles, we understand that we have to go out here and do what we need to do, finish what we start. And it's not about where you start, because everybody starts out rough. I know from working on over 70 books that every book that I start usually is a really rough in the beginning, but it's about persevering. And as you persevere, continuing to polish your story, refining your story, refining your craft, and making things cleaned up and making it the best it can be, so that once you finish your story and get it to the marketplace, you have put out the best you could possibly put out here. But a lot of Black people, they run into that one obstacle and one resistance, and then they want to quit and they want to give up. And you can't give up once you run into, again, that resistance. That resistance is to see what you're going to do in the face of adversity. And you can't go out here and quit when you have adversity. And this is a problem with Black folks, is that they don't want to go out here and face that adversity. They're afraid of some of them are afraid of failure, some of them are afraid of success, and some of us, we're just afraid of moving forward, and we're afraid of that unknown as related to moving forward. Because once you go out here and you've finished something, what happens is you step out into a great unknown. And I believe that unknown, again, terrifies a lot of Black people, because it's a place where they can't hold on to the crutches of victimization. They can't hold on to the crutches of blaming somebody else for their problems. And they can't hold on to blaming somebody else, because in that place where you are, after you finish what you start, you have to go out here and stand on your own. And standing on our own is something that a lot of Black people are really terrified of, is standing out here on their own, standing out here being vulnerable, and standing out here in a world where they have to compete against others on a platform by themselves, like we used to do during the days of Reconstruction and the days during Jim Crow. We had a lot of Black people who wanted to do this, but a lot of Black people today, they fear that everything they work for will be torn down. They fear that, but you can't be afraid of that. You have to face that fear, and you have to continue standing, because if you want something in this life, you're going to have to go for it, and you have to trust God to give it to you, because God, again, has the very best for you in this world. But you have to have faith in Him to help you get what you want in this life. But what I see with a lot of Black people, again, is their faith is very weak. They have a lot of fear, and because they have a lot of fear, they wind up never going out here and going out and stepping out on His promises, going out here and looking to see what nobody else sees, not trusting in the vision God has for them. And because they don't trust that vision, they never manifest anything into reality, and nothing becomes tangible, because they don't trust God to be able to guide them towards making anything tangible, because they're so busy looking at the white God, they don't trust in the living God. And in order to achieve anything and follow through on anything, you have to have faith, because faith is the thing that takes you towards achieving anything or accomplishing anything. And then once you have finished what you're doing, going out to do even greater things. That's what faith is all about. But most Black people are still living in fear. And you've got to come out of the fear mindset if you want to go out here and accomplish something constructive. You have to come out of that fear mindset. Thank you, Information Man Show, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. But you have to come out of that fear mindset if you want to do anything, because that fear mindset, what it'll do is it will undermine you at every time. Yes, you'll start out with all of this excitement, and I've seen people start out, oh, I've got all this excitement in the beginning, but then when the hard times come, these people, they give up, they quit, and then they never really accomplish anything. And they don't accomplish anything because they're too afraid of either failing, too afraid of criticism, or they're too afraid of success. And you can't be afraid of failure. You can't be afraid of success. And you can't be afraid of anything, because if God wants you to do something, He'll make a way for you to go out here and do it. You just have to go out here and trust Him, and He'll help you be able to do what you need to do. And if you sit there and you're afraid, you're never going to be able to do anything, and you'll still be in the same place that you were in before. And this is the other reason why many Black communities still remain ghettos, is because so many people are filled with this fear. And because they're filled with this fear, what they do is they never make any effort to accomplish anything. And then when they start seeing other people have success, they want to tear other people down. And I don't believe it's right to go out here and tear another man or another woman down, because they had the courage to go out here and step out on God's promises, and they have the faith to go out here and keep pushing. There's no reason to get mad at them. That's when you have to take that look inside of yourself and say, I need to ask God what I need to do for myself to get myself moving forward. And I need to start making efforts to work on what needs to be worked on if I want to go somewhere. If I'm stuck somewhere, I want to move forward, I have to see what's holding me back, and then start working on move things out of my way to move forward. And that's what more Black people need to do, because they're sitting there complaining about, oh, this one's this way, this is we're at the bottom. You don't have to be at the bottom. You don't have to be at the bottom of some white racist smooth world. You can be in your own world, and you can create your own standards, but you have to get over this fear. You have to set goals for what you want to do, and you have to push past that resistance in the follow through. And then you have to go out here, and once you finish a set of goals, then start working on new goals. And that's all part of going out here and achieving or accomplishing anything. But a lot of Black folks, they're afraid to go out here because of this fear. But that fear, if you want to move past it, you're going to have faith, and you're going to have to trust in God. And you're going to have to go out here and do what you need to do. I mean, it may mean cutting off old friends. It may mean walking away from family. It may mean walking away from people, but it's about moving your life to a better place, moving yourself to a better place, and having the vision to see better for yourself. Because if you want something bad enough, you are going to follow through, and you're going to be able to go out here and do it. I'm glad you like Temptation, One God Martyr, and I'm hoping that you enjoyed John Haynes' The Conversation with Death and Dark Succubus. A lot of people like those books. They like the books in the John Haynes series. They like the idea of seeing a strong, masculine Black man and a Black man who is representing Black leadership and representing an example of Black manhood. And my readers, I hope, will go out here and pick this book up, both these books, because I wrote these to be a positive example of Black manhood and Black masculinity, and something we desperately need these days with all these Black men in dresses and Black men being emasculated, like poor Will Smith was emasculated. We really need to see some positive examples of Black manhood, and that I wouldn't have been able to get these books out here if it wasn't for me having the courage to persevere. I mean, I got some really nasty letters from literary agents about this book. I got a lot of rejections, got like over 500 rejections for this book. And now this book is considered one of the books that's most critically acclaimed from my catalog. And this book, I wouldn't have been here if I didn't give up, if I had given up. I had to keep pushing to get this book out here. And I ran into, again, a lot of obstacles, a lot of resistance. I mean, people put the original cover on a lousy book covers list. I mean, I dealt with a lot of stuff, but I still kept persevering because I wanted to go out here and create positive stories for Black readers and give positive stories for Black people about the Black experience. Killer Side, I don't know about a Man Crisis 2. I've been pondering whether I want to do another nonfiction book, because with these nonfictions, I want to make sure the research is tight. I want to make sure the research is right. And I want to give people the very best. So I originally planned a nonfiction book to help Black boys as related to the unwritten social rules, but then I decided not to do that book because I thought that racists would get the information and try to use it against Black people out here. So I had to I scrapped that book. I was going to release that in 2019, and then one chapter was going to be about traveling internationally, and these passport Black males got so upset that I feared putting that book out there would create an even more, hostile situation, because some people don't really like the truth as related to Black men and traveling abroad. So they didn't understand that all of this is meant to teach you about these unwritten social rules, rules that our fathers and grandfathers knew about, but a lot of young men, they're not learning. And I figured, since I can't do the book, I would just teach them in live streams. I would teach them in videos and hopefully reach people there. I mean, I've thought about doing another man fit crisis book. And I've also, not a man crisis book, but I thought about doing a book about the impact on daughters as related to how we're in a crisis with them. Because I look at this whole Karen situation and the Keisha situation, and it shows me that young Black women are suffering as well, and women are suffering as well due to the complete breakdown and collapse of the family. And a lot of these people, I remember watching David Carroll talk about why Black women aren't acting ladylike. This was very interesting to me because, again, it shows me the impact of the daughter being damaged in the female-headed household. But I'm thinking about doing a blog first, talking about the talking points as related to ways single mothers destroy their daughters, because I'm seeing how a lot of daughters are being damaged as related to these single mother household. The reason why you have masculine women is because of these single mother households. And interesting, one guard, Martha, says, tuning in from Ethiopia. That's the second person I've run into from Africa. I mean, I get a lot of viewers from Africa. I also get them from places like Japan and Australia. I get viewers from all over the world. But I thought about doing one for daughters because we are in the middle of a woman crisis, as I see it. A lot of women don't know how to be women anymore, and they're complaining they can't get a man. But that's because their identities are all mixed up and messed up. But I don't know. I mean, I've got 2021 ISIS books finished. I've got John Haynes' 2021 book done. Working on E-Steams right now. Well, I might do another nonfiction book, but it just depends. We had a milestone this week with the Man Crisis. I mean, we've gotten the 400th sale of the Man Crisis, so getting closer to 500 sales on the Man Crisis. So a lot of guys are reading the Man Crisis and they're learning something from it. And I wrote that book because so many guys out here are suffering, and they're getting in incidents like saw that young boy get into with the 12 years old, was beat up in the store. It took me back to my days. I may do a follow-up video on that. And a lot of these boys are not getting guidance. They're not getting support. And I wrote the Man Crisis to help them get that guidance. So I'm glad everybody's enjoying the Man Crisis and other books like that. I wrote those books to transform lives and to help lives. I mean, I'm pondering doing another book, but I put a lot in there, and I want to do something with Stop Simping as well. I mean, when I see the video game simps out here, that may have to put that in another book. What are my views on Tamar Braxton? Sadly, I have to read more on it. I haven't really paid much attention to her, but she's been trouble for some time, and I think she's been having her issues. So she was a woman in crisis too, and a lot of blacks in Hollywood are in crisis, and that's been going on. But a lot of black people are in crisis too because they just don't understand what it's important about, following through and finishing up and moving on. Because if you don't follow through, you're never going to see any progress. If you never finish up, you're never going to meet any goals. And if you stay in one place, you're never going to be able to move forward. And that's going to stagnate you mentally, going to stagnate you physically, stagnate you emotionally. And I don't want to see Black people do that. That's why I made this stream, because I want Black people to understand that you have to keep pushing, you have to keep persevering, and you have to keep challenging yourself. And you can't be afraid of things like failure. You can't be afraid of loss. These setbacks are minor, but if you keep pushing, you'll be able to get somewhere. And you have to be able to keep pushing, because that's the only way you're going to be able to, again, start seeing tangible results like the books I'm holding in my hand. I wouldn't be able to hold these books in my hand if I didn't go out here and put in the effort. I wouldn't have a tangible. I would have nothing. And this is what happens to people when people don't go out here and commit and keep pushing towards what they want to do. When they don't do that, they don't wind up with anything. So I wanted people to understand you have to keep going, you have to keep pushing, and you may not see anything at one point, but eventually you may start seeing results if you keep going out here. I mean, I'm T-Mac. I didn't read much about Nick Cannon, so I have to really read on those things if I make videos on them. But I'm still like I'm still thinking about other topics. Like I want to do one about Greg Berlanti. What's going on, Benny G? Yeah, a lot of action there. A lot of guys are being too busy being simps. But there's no. But the whole thing is, you want to finish what you start, and finishing what you start is very important, because it's not about how you start; it's about how you finish. And I'm still working on goals that I want to finish eventually. I'm hoping to get to the point where I can do a complete ISIS graphic novel. And that's one of the goals I have. And even though I've had setbacks on it, I'm still pushing towards that goal. And I'm still pushing towards other goals. I want to be able to have a best-selling book one day, and I'm still pushing towards that. So I'm pushing towards a lot of different goals, and I want you to keep pushing towards your goals. And that's why I want you to understand why it's important to follow through and why it's important to finish, because finishing is not the end of everything. Finishing means you finished one part of what you want to do, and now it's time to continue moving on to the next thing. And finishing helps you understand that, okay, I'm done one thing, but there's more for me to do. And the more I learn, the more I get, the more I learn about different things, the more I learn about myself. And these are things that you when you have them and you finish something, you can go out here and once you've learned about yourself, you can learn what you're capable of, and you can learn how to actualize your potential and truly work towards becoming truly great. So I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream. I want to thank everybody for coming out to the stream, and I would really appreciate it if you guys would head over to Amazon and pick up some of my books in paperback or Kindle, especially the fiction books. I really want to get more sales on ISIS, the main event. Temptation of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. I want to see more readers picking up these action-packed books. A lot of good information in there. And picking up books on the man crisis, because I want to try to get that book to 500. So I really would appreciate if you guys would head over to Amazon and pick up some of these great paperbacks. And in order to keep me on the air, making more videos and more streams, if you could donate to the Cash App, I would be really grateful. And I really am very grateful, because that's how I pay for book covers and the internet. And I also pay for it through Patreon. So I want to thank all the patrons out there who have supported me, because if it wasn't for your help, I wouldn't have been able to get the Eastern Overdue comic out. And I want to get you guys the ISIS story but I still need that support. And the only way I get that support, again, is through the Cash Apps and the Patreons. I wanted to do another Indiegogo maybe one of these days, but the whole thing is it's hard to get those funded. But if I have enough money to pay for enough art, I think I can get one funded. So I'm working on that next. But I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream. And I also want everybody to go check out Chris Brown's Omega Black manga mailing list and sign up for that mailing list, because everybody who signs up before the Indiegogo will get free shipping. And it's a great manga. I'm an editor on that manga. So I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream, and I hope you'll be there for next week's stream.